A circle of stones stands aligned with the sun after 4,000 years. This precision was achieved without a single metal tool. Our modern world assumes technology requires advanced materials, but this video will completely change how you define engineering itself. You will discover the 26 hidden principles that allowed Stone Age cultures to manipulate massive stones and track celestial cycles with astonishing accuracy. How did they move multi-ton blocks across entire countries? And why would they encode secret acoustics into tombs? The answers reveal a forgotten chapter of human genius. What does true innovation look like when you strip away everything we think we need? That first principle is both simple and profound, a quiet revolution of the mind. Long before any stone was lifted, someone had to look up. Picture a person not so different from you or me, standing on a windswept hill night after night, year after year. Their only tools were their own eyes, their memory, and an unwavering patience we can scarcely comprehend today. They watched a particular star, noting how its rising point crept along the horizon with the seasons. They tracked the sun's slow march from its highest summer arc to its lowest, weakest winter climb. This was the genesis of everything that followed, the first and most crucial tool in the Stone Age engineer's kit, a tool of pure perception. They were mapping the heavens with their minds, learning to read the cosmic clockwork. This was not a casual hobby, it was a dedicated generational science. The cycles of the sun, moon, and stars became their reference points, as reliable as the grid lines on a modern blueprint. The flow of water taught them about leveling and erosion. They learned the language of materials, how certain stones fractured along clean lines, how others could absorb sound or resonate. As the archaeologist Aubrey Burl noted, these early monuments became permanent, physical records of this hard-won celestial knowledge. A standing stone was not just a marker, it was a data point set in earth, a way to freeze a moment of cosmic alignment for all time. This deep observational mastery allowed for something miraculous: prediction. By understanding the patterns, they could anticipate the solstices and equinoxes. They knew precisely where the sun would rise on the longest day of the year and where it would set on the shortest. And that knowledge dictated everything. It told them exactly where to place that first foundation stone, so that on a specific morning, a single beam of light would slice through a narrow opening and illuminate a sacred space. What looks to us like a circle of rough boulders was, to them, a meticulously calibrated calendar, a temple aligned with the universe itself. The engineering began not with force, but with focused, patient seeing. It began by learning to listen to the world. That cosmic blueprint was useless without the physical means to execute it. Here we encounter the second pillar of their genius, a profound and intimate mastery of the materials at hand. Forget the idea of primitive tools. In the hands of a Stone Age craftsperson, a piece of flint was not a rock, it was a responsive technology. They understood stone in a way we have largely forgotten, reading its internal structure, its fracture lines, and its potential with the intuitive ease of a modern engineer reading a schematic. This deep knowledge is called lithic technology, and it represents a pinnacle of human skill achieved without a single forge or furnace. They worked with a diverse toolkit from nature: chert for durable blades, obsidian for impossibly sharp edges, granite for enduring monuments, antler and bone for precise pressure flakers, and tough plant fibers for binding and leverage. An experimental archaeologist today can demonstrate how, through a process called controlled percussion and pressure flaking, a skilled napper can strike a core stone in just the right way to peel off a long, thin blade. The edge produced can be literally sharper than surgical steel, a fact that shatters our assumptions about progress. This material mastery scaled up dramatically. To quarry and shape the multi-ton stones for their circles and tombs, they employed a clever understanding of physics. They might drill a line of holes in a granite face, then insert dry wooden wedges. Pouring water over the wood would cause it to swell with tremendous, gradual force, cleanly splitting the stone along a predetermined line. For finer shaping, they used abrasives, sand, and water with a grinding stone, patiently wearing the surface down over countless hours. The lesson is profound. Technological sophistication is not defined by the material itself, but by the depth of human understanding applied to it. They did not have metal, so they learned to speak the language of stone fluently. They listened to what each material could do, and in that listening found ways to cut, shape, and move the very bones of the earth. That deep material knowledge had to be translated into a plan on a monumental scale. To do this, the ancient engineers turned the very landscape into their drafting table. Before a single standing stone was raised on Salisbury Plain, someone stood on that ground with a vision. They looked across the rolling hills and saw not just grass and sky, but a three-dimensional canvas. Their challenge was to transfer the perfect cosmic alignments from their mind's eye onto the uneven, living earth. They accomplished this with a third foundational concept, a practical, elegant geometry of the land. This was not geometry as we learn it from textbooks filled with abstract theorems. This was a hands-on, physical mathematics born from necessity and executed with simple, brilliant tools. A length of rope, a set of wooden stakes, and a bag of pebbles became their supercomputer. With a rope anchored at a central point, a person could walk in a circle, marking the perimeter with stakes or piles of stones. Instantly, they had a perfect circle, its size limited only by the length of their rope. To create a long, straight alignment over a hill, they might use a series of sighting poles, ensuring each new marker lined up with the two behind it, a technique called ranging that surveyors still use today. But the sophistication goes much deeper. Researchers have found that the layouts of many Neolithic monuments, including the early phases of Stonehenge, incorporate what we now call Pythagorean triples, sets of three whole numbers that perfectly describe the sides of a right-angled triangle. The famous 3-4-5 triangle is the classic example. How did they discover this centuries before Pythagoras was born? Almost certainly through the practical act of rope stretching. If you take a rope and mark it into 12 equal segments, you can form a triangle with sides of 3, 4, and 5 segments. When you pull it taut, the angle between the 3 and 4 segment sides is a perfect right angle. This was not theoretical math, it was a builder's trick, a way to ensure their stone avenues and rectangular chambers were perfectly squared, using nothing more than a knotted cord. We see the breathtaking scale of this applied geometry at places like the Carnac alignments in France. Here, over a period of centuries, communities raised thousands of individual standing stones, arranging them in parallel rows that stretch for kilometers across the countryside. To manage a project of that colossal size, a shared geometric understanding was essential. Everyone involved, from the planner to the stone mover, had to understand the plan, the sight lines, and the spacing. It was a communal mathematics etched into the land itself. The circles, rows, and mounds were not just symbols, they were the physical proof of a society that could think collectively in shapes, angles, and vast distances. They were turning abstract celestial patterns into permanent earthly forms, using a language of rope and stone that everyone could read. The geometry of rope and stone hints at something even more profound, a shared language of measurement. Across the vast expanse of Neolithic Europe, from the windswept islands of Scotland to the plains of southern England, the dimensions of sacred sites whisper a consistent number. This leads us to the fourth unseen principle, the potential for a standardized unit, a common rule by which these ancient engineers built their world. In the mid-20th century, an Oxford professor of engineering named Alexander Thom embarked on a remarkable survey. He meticulously measured hundreds of stone circles and burial monuments across Britain and France, not as an archaeologist, but as a man trained to see patterns in numbers and shapes. What he proposed was revolutionary and remains one of the most debated ideas in prehistoric studies. Thom suggested these disparate cultures were using a standardized unit of length, which he called the megalithic yard. His calculations pointed to a unit of approximately 2.72 feet, or 83 centimeters. The evidence came from the recurring proportions he found. The perimeters of many stone circles, for instance, seemed designed as whole multiples of this proposed unit. The diameters of circles often appeared in set ratios, like a familiar 5-to-4 relationship. Even more striking, the layouts of complex sites, with their concentric rings and astronomical alignments, appeared to be based on precise geometric shapes, ellipses and flattened circles, all dimensioned using this same theoretical measure. How could such a standard emerge across hundreds of miles and centuries? One compelling theory connects it directly to the first principle of celestial observation. It may have been derived from a day's worth of a pendulum swing, a natural timekeeper linked to the rotation of the Earth, translated into a fixed length. Another possibility is that it was based on human proportions, like the average pace of a tall individual, a living ruler that could be carried anywhere. The practical implications are staggering. If true, it means a master builder from one community could travel to another, communicate a design using this shared unit, and have it executed with fidelity. It suggests a level of planned communication and shared technical knowledge that transforms our view of Neolithic Europe from a collection of isolated villages into a loosely interconnected network of collaborating cultures. They were not just building in isolation, they were participating in a grand, continent-wide conversation of form and function, using a common vocabulary of measure to translate cosmic order into communal stone. But a shared measurement is only part of the story. These monuments were not silent blueprints. They were living spaces meant to be experienced with the entire body. Walk into the heart of the Great Passage Tomb at Newgrange in Ireland, a structure older than the pyramids. The air is still, the darkness profound. Now speak. Your voice does not simply fade, it seems to linger, to gather in the stone, transforming into something richer and more resonant. This is not an accident of architecture. It is the fifth foundational concept, the deliberate engineering of acoustics. We are discovering that many of these ancient sites were designed not just to be seen, but to be heard. They were instruments as much as they were buildings. Researchers using modern audio equipment have mapped the soundscapes of tombs and stone circles across Europe. They find consistent, remarkable effects. Certain chambers amplify specific frequencies of sound, creating a resonant hum or a prolonged echo that feels uncanny to the human ear. At the Hal Saflieni Hypogeum in Malta, an underground labyrinth carved from solid limestone over 5,000 years ago, one particular chamber produces a powerful resonance at a frequency around 110 Hz. This is within the range of a low male voice. When someone chants or drums within that space, the sound waves vibrate through the entire room and through the bodies of anyone inside. Intriguingly, studies in neuroacoustics suggest that sound frequencies in this range can have measurable effects on human brain activity, potentially altering states of awareness. The builders likely discovered this phenomenon through experience. They learned that by shaping a chamber just so, by curving a wall or placing a large, flat stone in a key position, they could trap and magnify sound in a way that felt transformative. This was a fusion of physics and spirituality. In a world without written liturgy, the very architecture could become the ritual. The thrum of a drum in a resonant tomb might have been felt as the heartbeat of the earth. A chant could become a chorus with the stones themselves, blurring the line between the individual and the collective, the human and the divine. This acoustic design reveals a goal far beyond mere monument building. It shows an intent to engineer experience, to use the environment to directly shape human consciousness during ceremonies of remembrance or initiation. The stones were not passive markers, they were active participants in a sacred dialogue, tuned by their creators to resonate with both the voice and the spirit. The resonant stones could only rise through the hands of many. Moving a single 30-ton sarsen slab from a quarry 20 miles away to the Salisbury Plain is a feat that defies any individual. It demands a sixth, equally vital form of engineering, one built not from flint or rope but from human connection. This was the mastery of social organization, the ability to coordinate the wills, muscles, and hearts of an entire community toward a single generational goal. Think of it as the original operating system for monumental work. Before the first log roller was placed under a stone, a complex social machine had to click into motion. Someone had to plan not just the monument's design, but its construction schedule around planting and harvest seasons. Others organized the procurement and transport of food and tools for a workforce that could number in the hundreds. This was a society temporarily re-engineering itself, shifting from scattered family homesteads to a focused, camp-based collective with a unified purpose. Anthropologists studying similar projects in traditional societies point to the powerful role of shared belief and ritual in sustaining such efforts. The act of building was likely not separate from ceremony. It was the ceremony, pulling a stone together rhythmically to the beat of drums or chants, transformed back-breaking labor into a sacred act of participation. Each heave on a rope became a prayer made physical, each layer of the mound a collective offering. This shared endeavor served a profound social function. It forged a powerful collective identity, turning a concept like our people into a tangible memory of shared sweat and achievement. The finished monument then stood as permanent, undeniable proof of what they could accomplish together. The question of motivation is crucial. Was this forced labor imposed by a powerful few, or a voluntary communal undertaking? While hierarchies undoubtedly existed, evidence from many sites suggests a more cooperative model. The scale and duration of these projects, often spanning multiple human lifetimes, imply a deep cultural buy-in. You cannot compel a society to pour its heart into a vision for a century through coercion alone. The motivation likely flowed from a shared cosmology, a belief that by building this cosmic mirror on Earth, they were ensuring the continuity of the seasons, the fertility of the land, and the memory of their ancestors. The monument became the glue that held the community together across generations, a project where every person, from the master planner to the child carrying a water skin, had a role. In this light, the Great Stone Circle is more than an astronomical tool. It is the fossilized imprint of a society's ability to dream together, organize together, and build together. It is the ultimate engineering blueprint, written not on parchment, but in the unified effort of an entire culture. The most breathtaking demonstration of their cosmic understanding lasts just 17 minutes. Deep within the great mound of Newgrange, a narrow channel above the entrance, known as the roof box, sits empty and dark for 364 days of the year. But on the dawn of the winter solstice, and for a few mornings before and after, a thin, brilliant blade of sunlight pierces that opening. It travels down the 60-foot passageway like a laser, finally flooding the central chamber with golden light. This is not a happy accident of architecture. It is a seventh foundational concept, the engineering of time itself. These structures were their clocks, their calendars, and their observatories, all carved from the landscape. To achieve such precision required tracking cycles far more complex than a single sunrise. They mapped the slow, 18.6-year wobble of the moon's orbit, a cycle known as the lunar standstill. At sites like the Noath Passage tomb, also in Ireland, the curbstones surrounding the mound are covered in intricate spirals and geometric patterns. Some researchers believe these are a form of notation, a permanent record of lunar observations meant to predict eclipses or mark this long celestial rhythm. The moon's path was as important as the sun's, its changing face and position woven into their understanding of time and tide. The most famous alignment of all is at Stonehenge. If you stand in the center of the stone circle on the summer solstice and look northeast through the great archways, you will see the sun rise almost directly over the outlying heel stone. This alignment was so crucial that the entire monumental phase of construction, the transport and erection of the giant sarcens, was orchestrated to preserve and perfect this sightline established centuries earlier with simpler bluestones. It was a generational commitment to a single moment of celestial connection. This stone-bound timekeeping served profoundly practical needs. Knowing the exact date of the solstice or the equinox was critical for an agricultural society. It told them when to plant, when to harvest, and when to move their herds, but its purpose ran far deeper than the seasonal to-do list. In their worldview, the sun did not simply rise because of physics, it rose because of a sacred, cyclical covenant. By building a temple that captured the sun's rebirth at the winter solstice, its weakest point, they were actively participating in ensuring its return. They were helping to turn the wheel of the year. The calendar was a spiritual technology. The light at Newgrange, the moon over Noath, the sun at Stonehenge. These were not just spectacles for the elite. They were communal affirmations. When the dawn light finally touched the back wall of that dark chamber, it validated the entire community's effort, their calendar, and their place in the cosmos. It proved their ancestors had been right, that the patterns held, and that their world remained in balance. The engineering here achieved something we still strive for. It made the invisible flow of time visible, tangible, and sacred, turning cosmic certainty into a shared experience of awe. The mastery of time and sky was mirrored by an equally vital command of the Earth's most essential element. Far from the grand stone circles, in the daily life of a Neolithic village, another form of precision was at work, one that sustained the community from the ground up. This is the eighth foundational concept, the quiet genius of hydraulic engineering. At the remarkable settlement of Skara Brae in Orkney, Scotland, a village older than Stonehenge, the stone houses are connected by covered, stone-lined passageways. Built into the very floors of these homes are small, rectangular chambers. For decades, these were thought to be storage boxes, but a more compelling theory has emerged. These carefully constructed features, linked by a subtle network of drains, may have been the world's first indoor plumbing, designed for managing water and waste. The entire village was engineered with a gentle slope, allowing rainwater and other liquids to flow away from the living spaces through these carved stone channels, a simple yet brilliant system for hygiene and comfort. This was not an isolated innovation. At Çatalhöyük in Turkey, one of the world's earliest large settlements, the community did not have a convenient river at its doorstep. Instead, they engineered their water supply. They built clay-lined channels to capture and direct fresh spring water from nearby sources into the heart of their densely packed mud brick city. They even crafted terracotta pipes, ensuring a clean, reliable flow for cooking, drinking, and crafts like pottery. This practical, everyday precision reveals a profound understanding of hydrology and public health. They selected settlement sites not just for defense or farmland, but for access to springs or with natural drainage. They shaped the land with embankments and ditches to control runoff and prevent their homes from flooding. Managing water was not merely a chore, it was a continuous, collaborative engineering project fundamental to survival. It required foresight to design systems that would function for generations, and cooperation to maintain them. This practical mastery completes our picture of the Neolithic engineer, The same mind that could align a tomb with a solstice sunrise could also calculate the precise gradient needed for a drain. The same hands that shaped a resonant monolith could carefully fit stones to create a watertight channel. Their brilliance was holistic, applying the principles of observation, material knowledge, and communal effort to both the cosmic and the domestic. The grand monuments speak to their spiritual and astronomical aspirations, but the quiet water channels speak to their deep, enduring commitment to life itself. That practical mastery of shaping stone found its most elegant expression in structures that seemed to grow directly from the earth. Across the highlands and islands of Scotland, solitary stone towers rise from the landscape, their silhouettes stark against the sky. These are the brocks, and to stand inside one is to witness the ninth foundational concept, the art of dry stone construction. These are not piles of rock. They are three-dimensional puzzles of incredible complexity, built entirely without mortar, glue, or any binding agent. Their stability relies solely on the intelligence of their assembly, a testament to a hands-on understanding of physics that feels almost timeless. The principle is deceptively simple, yet its execution requires a lifetime of skill. Each stone is chosen not just for its size, but for its shape. The builder reads the stone, turning it in their hands to find its natural resting place, where its contours will lock securely against its neighbors. The walls are built with a deliberate inward slope, a feature called batter. This gentle taper transfers the immense weight of the structure downward and inward, creating a stable, gravity-defying form that narrows elegantly as it rises. Inside the thick walls, the construction is even more clever. The outer and inner faces of the wall are not independent. They are tied together by long, flat stones laid across the width, binding the entire structure into a single, monolithic entity. The empty spaces between these through stones are carefully packed with smaller rubble, which settles and compacts over time, increasing the wall's density and strength. The result is a shelter that is both formidable and surprisingly resilient, able to flex slightly in high winds or even minor earth tremors without cracking, unlike a rigid, mortared wall that might shatter. This was a technology that traveled. We see its sophisticated cousins in the Nurag of Sardinia, conical stone fortresses that dot the Mediterranean island, and in the breathtaking agricultural terraces of Machu Picchu, where precisely fitted retaining walls have held back mountainsides for centuries. Each culture adapted the core principles to their own materials and needs, but the underlying genius was the same. It was a conversation between the builder and the stone, a negotiation of weight, friction, and balance. The dry stone wall or tower is more than a building. It is a physical theorem. It demonstrates that true durability does not come from forcing materials together with a stronger glue, but from understanding how they naturally want to support one another. These silent sentinels, enduring storms and centuries, are the ultimate proof of concept, a lesson from the past written in a language of balanced stone. The silent stability of dry stone towers gives no hint of the epic journey some stones undertook. To grasp the scale of their ambition, we must follow the trail of the bluestones. These distinctive spotted dolerite pillars, each weighing up to 4 tons, form the inner circle at Stonehenge. Their origin was a mystery for centuries, until modern geology provided a stunning answer. They came from the Preseli Hills in southwest Wales, a distance of over 140 miles as the crow flies, across rugged terrain, rivers, and potentially open sea. This was not a casual gathering of local materials. This was the 10th foundational concept, a monumental feat of transportation logistics that stands as one of prehistory's greatest puzzles. How do you move 80 massive stones across a country without wheels, without draft animals, and without metal tools? The answer lies in a blend of brute force, clever physics, and breathtaking social coordination. The first challenge was the route itself. Researchers have proposed several potential paths, One theory suggests a primarily overland journey, skirting the southern edge of Wales and then east across what is now England. Another, more dramatic hypothesis involves a partial water route. The stones might have been hauled to the Welsh coast, loaded onto large wooden rafts or lashed between canoes, floated along the coast, then brought upriver on the other side before the final overland trek to Salisbury Plain. Each option presented its own nightmarish set of obstacles. Modern experiments have tried to recreate these journeys to test their feasibility. Teams from University College London and other institutions have built replica Neolithic sledges and used greased log rails. They've found that on level ground, a team of around 20 people could, with immense effort, drag a 1-ton stone. But for a 4-ton bluestone, you would need a team of 80 or more, working in perfect unison, with fresh crews rotating in constantly. The logistics of supporting such an operation become staggering. They would need to plan for food and water for hundreds of workers over weeks or months. They would have to wait for the right seasonal conditions, when the ground was firm but not frozen, when river levels were high enough for rafts but not flooding. The coordination speaks to a society with masterful project management. Someone had to scout the entire route in advance, identifying the easiest passes, the safest river crossings, and the locations for temporary camps. They had to organize the construction of the sledges or rafts from local timber. They had to manage the rhythm of the pull, likely synchronized by chants or drumbeats to turn a chaotic heave into a steady, rhythmic march. Every inch of that 140-mile journey was a triumph of collective will over the immense inertia of the earth. It was an act of faith made literal, a slow, deliberate procession that physically connected a sacred source in the Western Mountains to a sacred destination on the Eastern Plain. The stones were not just building materials, they were pilgrims on a generational journey, and their arrival was the culmination of a story written in sweat and determination across the landscape itself. A carved spiral is more than decoration, it is a diagram of a belief. The 11th unseen principle moves beyond the physical into the realm of meaning, revealing how these ancient engineers were also philosophers of stone, building their cosmology into the very fabric of their world. The iconic triple spiral deep inside Newgrange, illuminated by the solstice sun, is not random artistry. To the community that carved it, this shape likely held profound symbolic weight, perhaps mapping the sun's journey from dawn to dusk, or the three realms of earth, sky, and underworld, or the endless cycle of life, death, and rebirth. This is symbolic engineering, where form and function merge with faith. The very shape of their most common monument, the circle, is a powerful statement. In a world governed by cycles, the sun, the moon, the seasons, the circle had no beginning and no end. It represented wholeness, continuity, and the eternal return. When a community gathered inside a stone circle, they were not just standing within a calendar, they were physically enacting their place within the cosmic wheel, a living symbol of their unity and their connection to the cycles that sustain them. This symbolic intent extended far beyond the monument's footprint. The placement of these sites was never arbitrary. They were positioned within a sacred geography, a living tapestry of meaning. A henge might be built at the confluence of two rivers, seen as the meeting of spiritual forces. A burial mound might crown a hill, placing the ancestors closer to the sky. The process of constructing the monument was itself a sacred act, a deliberate alteration of the landscape that was seen as a conversation with the powers of the place. By raising stones on a particular ridge, they were highlighting that ridge's role in the celestial drama, turning a natural feature into a focal point of ritual. This transforms our understanding of their work. They were not simply imposing human order on a passive landscape. They were engaging in a reciprocal dialogue with a world they perceived as alive and meaningful. The engineering was a form of reverence, a way to make the invisible patterns of their belief system visible and tangible. The stone was the page, and their cosmology was the text. When we look at a stone circle today, we are not just looking at an ancient tool, we are reading a three-dimensional prayer, a permanent statement about humanity's enduring desire to find pattern, purpose, and sacred connection in the vast architecture of the world. A single misaligned stone could teach a generation more than 100 perfect ones. The breathtaking precision we see at sites like Stonehenge or Newgrange was not a sudden revelation, but a hard-won victory achieved over lifetimes, a slow, collective climb toward perfection. This is the 12th foundational concept, the invisible engine of all progress, the quiet, relentless work of experimentation and iteration. We must shift our perspective from a single moment of construction to a timescale that spans centuries. At the Great Stone Circle of Avebury, the largest in Europe, archaeologists see not one grand plan, but a story written in layers. The massive earthwork bank and ditch were dug, then later widened. The colossal sarsen stones were erected, and over time some were repositioned, their alignment subtly adjusted. This was not a sign of failure, but of learning. A generation of builders might have noticed that the midwinter sunset, as seen from the center of their circle, was slightly off from a key marker stone. They did not tear the whole structure down. They made a note literally in the earth, and the next generation, armed with that observation, might have shifted a single stone a few degrees or added a new outlier to correct the sightline. This iterative process is the very heartbeat of engineering. It is the recognition that knowledge is cumulative. Each phase of construction was a living experiment. They tried different quarrying techniques, learning which stones split cleanly and which shattered. They experimented with transport methods, discovering that a sled on greased timber rails moved more smoothly than one on bare ground. They tested different foundation pits to see which kept the monolith standing straight through winter storms. The archaeological record is a chronicle of these trials. We see post holes from earlier wooden structures that preceded the stone circles, as if they were practicing the geometry and the gathering rituals on a smaller, more adaptable scale before committing to eternity in stone. We find stones that were shaped but never used, perhaps because they fractured during dressing, a lesson learned for the next block. This long-term perspective completely transforms our view of prehistory. It was not a static, slow-moving era. It was a dynamic period of continuous, purposeful innovation, where each generation stood on the shoulders of the previous, not with written manuals, but with oral traditions, shared memories, and the physical evidence of what worked and what did not. The final, magnificent form of a monument was the answer to a question asked over hundreds of years. It was the culmination of countless small refinements, a testament to a culture that valued the long game, understanding that true precision is not found in a single brilliant idea, but in the patient, collective work of getting closer, generation after generation. That patient, iterative process unfolded within a world of specific challenges and resources. The land itself was not a blank slate, but a partner with its own demands and gifts. This brings us to the 13th foundational concept, a principle of profound wisdom, environmental adaptation and sustainability. The greatest Stone Age engineers understood they were not separate from their ecosystem. They were a part of it, and their most enduring creations emerged from a deep dialogue with the place they called home. Consider the crannogs of Scotland and Ireland. In a landscape of misty logs and damp ground, the solution was not to drain the swamp, but to build upon it. Communities would select a shallow area of a lake and begin a meticulous, layered construction. They drove wooden piles into the loch bed to form a circular enclosure. Then they filled this ring with layers of stone, timber, and brushwood, gradually raising an artificial island that stood above the waterline. On this stable, custom-made foundation, they built their wooden roundhouses. The engineering was elegantly responsive. The water provided a natural moat for defense. The lake offered a ready source of fish, and the construction materials were all locally sourced from the surrounding woods and shores. The crannog was not imposed on the loch, it was an extension of it, a human creation woven seamlessly into the aquatic environment. This philosophy of working with the grain of the land appears across the globe. Far to the west, in the arid canyons of the American Southwest, the ancestral Puebloans faced a different set of extremes: scorching sun, freezing nights, and limited water. Their engineering response was masterful adaptation. They built their intricate multi-story dwellings not on open ground, but within the vast, sheltered alcoves of cliff faces. These natural stone overhangs provided a ready-made roof, regulating temperature by offering shade in the summer and retaining warmth in the winter. The structures were built from the very sandstone of the cliffs, their earthy tones making them appear to grow from the rock itself. They engineered sophisticated water catchment systems, channeling scarce rainfall from the mesa tops into carefully placed cisterns. Every aspect of the design was a conversation with the local climate and topography, minimizing environmental impact while maximizing comfort and survival. This sustainable approach was born of necessity, but it reflects a sophisticated environmental intelligence. They used what was locally abundant, whether it was the glacial boulders of a Scottish field, the timber of a nearby forest, or the clay of a riverbank. Transport was energy-intensive, so the design started with the materials at hand. This local sourcing meant that when a settlement was eventually abandoned, the materials would slowly return to the landscape, leaving a low-impact footprint. Their constructions were not monuments to human dominance over nature, but testaments to a partnership. They observed the direction of the prevailing wind and oriented a door away from it. They understood the path of the sun and positioned a dwelling to capture its winter warmth. They read the flow of water and built their walls to follow the natural contours of the land. In doing so, they achieved a resilience that speaks across millennia. The crannog posts may rot, the cliff-dwelling mortar may crumble, but the intelligence behind them, the principle of building with the environment rather than against it, stands as a quiet, powerful lesson. It reminds us that the most sustainable engineering does not fight the world it inhabits, but listens to it, learns from it, and finds a way to belong. The child's hands are guided by an elder's, learning a pressure that cannot be written down. In a world without a single written word, the survival of an entire engineering tradition depended on a 14th, living principle, the art of knowledge transmission. How do you teach the precise angle to strike a flint core or the complex geometry for a stone circle across dozens of human lifetimes? The answer lies not in libraries, but in the very fabric of daily life and sacred practice. This was a living curriculum taught through the body and remembered by the community. Apprenticeship was the primary school. A young person would spend years beside a master craftsperson, not just listening but doing. They learned the feel of different stones, the sound of a good strike, the muscle memory for dragging a sarsen, through endless repetition and gentle correction. The knowledge was stored in their hands, their posture, their instincts. But technical skill was only one layer. Ritual and storytelling wrapped these practical lessons in meaning, making them unforgettable. The story of how the first people brought the sun stone from the distant mountains was not just a myth. It was a narrative map of the transport route, a sacred justification for the immense effort, and a mnemonic device that encoded logistics into legend. Songs and dances likely provided rhythmic structure for coordinated labor, turning the sequence of actions for raising a lintel into a communal chant. The beat set the pace for the pull, and the verses may have contained subtle cues about positioning or timing. The monument under construction was itself the ultimate textbook. As a community worked together to lay out a circle with ropes, they were receiving a hands-on lesson in practical geometry. As they aligned an entrance with the rising solstice sun, they were internalizing celestial patterns. The act of building taught social organization, logistics, and collective purpose more powerfully than any lecture could. This system was astonishingly robust. It preserved not just simple traditions, but highly sophisticated, nuanced knowledge for over 1,000 years in some places. The consistency in tool-making styles across vast distances, or the shared architectural principles seen in monuments centuries apart, testify to a network of teaching and learning that spanned generations. Knowledge was not a possession to be hoarded, but a sacred trust to be passed on, a flame kept alive from one set of hands to the next. The true monument was not merely the circle of stones, but the living culture that could conceive of it, teach its construction, and remember its meaning long after the original architects had passed. Their greatest engineering feat was building a bridge of memory across the river of time. A fallen lintel reveals more than a standing one ever could. Across the Neolithic landscape, alongside the triumphs, we find the quiet evidence of things that did not go according to plan. A massive capstone lies cracked beside its supporting uprights. A section of a dry stone wall has slumped inward. The entrance to a tomb is a few degrees off from the intended solstice alignment. These are not marks of shame, but invaluable records, the 15th foundational concept in action. The ancient engineers were not infallible, and their responses to these challenges reveal a deeply pragmatic, resilient intellect. Consider the process of shaping a 20-ton sarsen block with nothing but stone hammers and fire. Experiments show that even with immense skill, the shock of repeated percussion could create hidden stress fractures. A builder might work for weeks, only to have the stone split in an unintended way at the final stage. What did they do with this costly failure? Often they adapted. They might incorporate the fractured stone into the structure in a different, supporting role, or use it as packing material within a wall. At other sites, we see clear evidence of corrections. A row of stones might curve slightly to accommodate one that was set in the wrong place, or an extra post hole might be dug nearby to shore up a leaning monolith. These on-the-fly adjustments speak of a flexible, problem-solving mindset. They did not see a project as a rigid blueprint, but as a living process where the material itself had a voice. The limits of their technology were real. They could not melt iron to make stronger tools or mix concrete for deeper foundations, so they worked within those constraints, learning through direct experience what the earth and their materials would allow. A collapsed wall taught them about soil stability and drainage. A misaligned sunrise sighting refined their astronomical observations for the next generation. This iterative trial-and-error approach is the very essence of engineering in any age. It humanizes them, pulling away the veil of mystery to show a community of determined people facing stubborn physical problems, arguing over solutions and trying again. Their greatest monuments were not delivered from on high in perfect form, they were earned. Each weathered stone, each subtle correction, is a testament to perseverance. It reminds us that innovation is rarely a straight line from idea to perfection, but a winding path of attempt, setback, and creative adaptation. The true measure of their genius is not that they never failed, but in how they listened to those failures and built something enduring from the lessons. The same drive to shape a meaningful world with stone and sky ignited across oceans and continents. Far from the moors of Britain, on a sun-baked plateau in Peru, the city of Caral rose from the dust over 4,600 years ago, a contemporary of the earliest Egyptian pyramids. Here, in one of the America's first urban centers, engineers built without metal, using a technique as ingenious as it was simple. They filled woven reed bags with stones from the nearby riverbed, creating durable, modular building blocks known as shikras. These bags were stacked in layers to form the cores of their monumental platform mounds and pyramids, then faced with precisely cut stone and finished with colored plaster. This was earthquake country, and the shikra construction provided a flexible, shock-absorbing structure that could withstand the tremors of the Andean region. a brilliant adaptation to a specific environmental challenge. Their precision extended to acoustics as well, with flutes carved from condor and pelican bones demonstrating an advanced understanding of sound, and their urban plan reflecting a complex social order aligned with celestial bodies. Across the continent, in the heart of what is now the United States, the Mississippian culture at Cahokia built a vast urban landscape centered on enormous earthen mounds. The largest, Monk's Mound, is a colossal terraced pyramid containing over 22 million cubic feet of soil, all moved by hand in baskets. Its central axis is aligned precisely with the cardinal directions, and a large circular arrangement of wooden posts to its west, known as Woodhenge, functioned as a solar calendar, marking the equinoxes and solstices to guide agricultural and ceremonial life. This was astronomy engineered from earth and timber. Meanwhile, across the Pacific in the wetlands of China's Yangtze River Delta, the Liangzhu culture achieved a different kind of precision, one of exquisite miniaturization. Over 5,000 years ago, with tools of stone and bamboo, they worked jade, one of the hardest materials on Earth, into flawless ceremonial objects. Using abrasives like quartz sand and a tireless, generations-long process of grinding, drilling, and polishing, they created intricate discs and Kong tubes inscribed with microscopic, uniform masks. This work required not only phenomenal patience but a standardized system of measurement and a shared symbolic language, reflecting a society of immense spiritual and technical sophistication. While the materials differed, jade versus sarsen stone, and the forms varied from pyramids to plazas to polished artifacts, the underlying cognitive leap was identical. These cultures, separated by vast distances and with no possible contact, all arrived at the same conclusion, that through careful observation, communal effort, and deep material understanding, they could impose profound order on their world. They each developed their own form of non-metallic engineering to track time, honor their beliefs, and unite their communities. This global perspective dissolves the old myth of a single cradle of civilization or isolated genius. Instead, it reveals a tapestry of parallel invention, a story not of one people's brilliance, but of a shared human capacity. When faced with the universal challenges of survival, the need to mark time, to honor forces greater than themselves, and to build a legacy, human minds in every corner of the globe independently found paths to precision. They answered the same fundamental questions with the tools their environment provided, proving that innovation is not a product of any one culture, but a fundamental expression of what it means to be human, curious, cooperative, and forever striving to make meaning from the raw materials of existence. A flint blade can be so thin it catches the light like a sliver of glass. This 17th concept dissolves a modern boundary we often take for granted, the strict separation between the workshop and the studio, between the engineer and the artist. In the hands of a Neolithic craftsperson, the act of making was a unified expression. The most exquisite tools ever produced, like the Solutrean laurel leaf points of prehistoric Europe, are breathtaking in their duality. They are engineered for a deadly purpose, designed to fly true and penetrate deeply, yet they are also sculpted with a conscious pursuit of beauty. Their edges ripple with a precise, parallel flaking pattern that required immense control, and their form achieves a symmetrical elegance that feels intentional, almost ceremonial. Why would someone spend dozens of extra hours perfecting the aesthetics of a tool that would be used to hunt or butcher? The answer lies in understanding that these objects lived in a world where meaning was layered. A tool of such refined craftsmanship might signal far more than skill. It could denote the status of its owner, a master hunter or a person of spiritual importance. It might have been created for a specific, significant event, a ritual hunt or an offering, the decorative pressure flaking along its edges, serving no functional advantage for cutting, transforms it from a mere instrument into a carrier of identity and value. It becomes a form of communication, a physical testament to the maker's patience, reverence for the material, and their place within a cultural tradition that honored the process as much as the product. This fusion reveals a core truth about their approach to precision. For them, a job well done was not measured solely by whether the spear found its mark. It was also measured by the grace of its line, the harmony of its form, the care evident in its making. The drive for beauty was not an add-on, it was integral to the act of creation itself. It embedded cultural values, a sense of honor and connection, directly into the bone, antler, and stone of everyday life. When we look at such an object, we are not just seeing ancient technology. We are seeing a philosophy made solid, a belief that to shape the world with intention and grace was in itself a sacred practice. The stones do more than mark a calendar, they shape the mind. This 18th concept reveals the psychological dimension of their work, the deliberate engineering of human experience itself. To stand in the center of a vast stone circle is to feel a sudden shift in perspective. The towering monoliths do not simply surround you, they enclose you, directing your gaze upward and outward, framing the sky in a ring of ancient permanence. This was no accident of design. The scale, the symmetry, the very path of the sun through the architecture were all calibrated to produce a specific internal state, one of awe, reverence, and a profound sense of connection to something far greater than the self. In modern terms, we might call this environmental psychology, but for them, it was simply the goal. They understood that the space in which a ritual occurs is as important as the ritual itself. The architecture provided what researchers call affordances, subtle invitations for certain behaviors and emotions. A long, narrow passageway into a tomb forces a single-file procession, slowing movement, lowering the voice, and creating a palpable sense of transition from the world of the living to a different realm. The confined, resonant chamber at the end then amplifies even a whisper, making shared sound a deeply intimate collective experience. These spaces were engineered to facilitate and intensify communal rituals. The shared labor of building them created one form of social bond, but the shared experience of using them forged another, deeper one. Gathering within the perfect geometry of a circle reinforced the idea of social unity and equality. Watching the solstice light strike a carved spiral together created a powerful collective memory, a moment of shared certainty that validated their entire world view. The engineered environment became a tool for reinforcing social order and cosmic narrative simultaneously. It connected the individual's emotional state to the community's purpose and to the perceived order of the heavens. This was consciousness shaping through stone and shadow. By orchestrating movement, sight, and sound, the builders could guide participants toward a heightened state of awareness, a feeling of being part of a timeless story. The monument was not just a place where rituals happened, it was the primary actor in the ritual, a silent partner that framed, focused, and magnified every human action and emotion within it. Their genius lay in recognizing that the greatest structure they could build was not made of granite, but of shared feeling. The most persistent myth about these monuments is also the most insulting to the people who built them. It suggests that such precision must have come from somewhere else, from visitors among the stars, because our own ancestors simply could not have managed it. This idea is not just a flight of fancy, it actively erases one of humanity's greatest stories. The truth, supported by every shovel of earth turned by archaeologists, is far more remarkable. It is a story of human ingenuity, written in stone and soil over thousands of years. We can trace the entire journey from the first simple post holes to the final, polished monolith, and at every step we find people learning, adapting, and passing knowledge down. The evidence for gradual, indigenous development is overwhelming. We do not find a single perfect circle appearing from nowhere. We find sites like Stonehenge, which began over 5,000 years ago as a simple circular bank and ditch with perhaps a ring of wooden posts. Centuries later, smaller blue stones were brought from Wales and arranged in a new pattern. Only after another 500 years were the gigantic sarsen stones erected and shaped with stone mauls. This is not the signature of an instant, alien gift. It is the clear, painstaking handwriting of a culture evolving its own technology and cosmology across 50 generations. The tools tell the same story. We have found the stone hammers, the antler picks, the shaped mauls, often by the thousands at quarry sites and construction zones. We have the experimental evidence that these tools, in skilled hands, are perfectly capable of shaping granite and sandstone. We have the failed attempts, the cracked lintels and abandoned stones that prove this was a human endeavor full of setbacks and creative solutions. To attribute these works to extraterrestrials is to ignore the mountains of physical proof left behind by the actual builders. More importantly, it underestimates what human communities are capable of when united by a shared vision. We see this capacity in every age. The cathedral builders of the medieval period achieved structural miracles with rudimentary mathematics and communal faith. The Polynesian navigators crossed thousands of miles of open ocean using only their knowledge of stars, waves, and birds. Human history is a chronicle of ordinary people achieving extraordinary things through observation, cooperation, and relentless perseverance. Giving credit to aliens is not just bad science, it is a profound failure of imagination. It robs those ancient engineers of their legacy and tells us we are lesser than we are. The real wonder is not that beings from another world might have come here to stack stones, but that people just like us, with no technology we would recognize, learned to speak the language of the cosmos and build its echo into the earth. That is a heritage worth claiming, a testament to the limitless potential of the human mind and spirit when it works in concert across the ages. The principles locked within those stone circles did not vanish with the advent of metal. They became the bedrock. The 20th foundational concept is one of enduring legacy, a direct and unbroken line connecting the post and lintel construction of Stonehenge to the soaring stone columns of the Parthenon. The unseen engineers of the Stone Age did not create a dead end. They established the very grammar of monumental building, a template that all later civilizations would refine, not replace. Their mastery of load-bearing weight, of standardized measurement, and of celestial alignment provided the essential prototypes. The metal chisel and the bronze saw did not invent these ideas. They simply made them easier to execute on an even grander scale. Look at the fundamental architectural unit, the trilithon, two uprights supporting a horizontal lintel. This is the essence of Stonehenge. Now look at the colonnade of a Greek temple, rows of stone columns supporting an entablature. The material is dressed more finely, the proportions are codified into orders, but the core mechanical principle of compression and support is identical. It is the same conversation with gravity, begun with sarsen stones and continued with marble. The legacy extends into the very organization of work. The colossal collective labor that moved bluestones across Wales finds a direct echo in the community efforts that built the earthen pyramids of Mesoamerica or the great walls of early cities. The social engineering, the ability to coordinate hundreds or thousands of people toward a single vision, was a blueprint inherited by every complex society that followed. Even their celestial precision was not lost. The solar and lunar alignments carefully encoded in passage tombs and stone circles established a tradition of sacred astronomy. This knowledge flowed into the later observatories of the Babylonians, the calendrical systems of the Maya, and the astrological charts of countless cultures. They proved that the heavens could be measured and marked, a concept that became a cornerstone of science, religion, and timekeeping for millennia. To see them merely as primitive precursors is to miss the point entirely. They were the essential innovators. They took the raw potential of human collaboration and material intelligence and established the core concepts: load, span, alignment, and communal effort. Metal tools provided a new vocabulary, but the language of engineering itself was first spoken in the patient rhythm of stone on stone, in the long watch of the stars, and in the unified pull of a community toward a horizon they would never see. Their greatest monument is not any single circle of stones, but the enduring architecture of human ingenuity they helped to raise. A laser's precise light traces the surface of a 4,000-year-old stone, capturing details finer than a human hair. This 21st foundational concept is a bridge across time, where modern technology becomes a translator for the ancient world. Tools like LiDAR, ground-penetrating radar, and chemical analysis are not just adding to our knowledge, they are fundamentally changing the conversation, allowing the unseen engineers to finally show us the meticulous care embedded in their work. LiDAR, which stands for light detection and ranging, works by sending millions of laser pulses from an aircraft down through forest canopies. The reflections create a three-dimensional map of the ground surface, digitally stripping away trees and undergrowth to reveal the human-shaped landscape beneath. In dense jungles of Central America or the wooded hills of Britain, this technology has unveiled vast networks of forgotten roads, hidden ceremonial platforms, and entire settlements that were completely invisible from the ground. It shows us that what we thought was an isolated stone circle was often the centerpiece of a much larger, carefully organized ritual landscape, a hub in a network of sacred geography. Meanwhile, ground-penetrating radar sends radio waves into the earth, painting a picture of what lies below without moving a single shovel of soil. At sites like Stonehenge, this has revealed a stunning complexity, a constellation of buried pits, post holes, and pathways that tell a story of continual change and refinement over centuries. We can see the ghostly outlines of earlier wooden structures, the trial placements of stones that were later moved, the evidence of processional avenues. It is like reading a palimpsest, a manuscript where earlier drafts are still faintly visible beneath the final text. On a microscopic scale, residue analysis examines the tiny traces left on ancient tools. A flint blade, examined under powerful microscopes and subjected to chemical tests, might reveal minuscule particles of plant starch or animal collagen. This tells us it was used for cutting specific materials, transforming an anonymous artifact into a specific story. Was this beautifully crafted point used for hunting, for woodworking, or perhaps in a ceremonial context for preparing special materials? The stone itself can now testify to its own life history. These techniques collectively achieve something profound. They restore intention. A faint, curved scrape on a lintel, revealed by three-dimensional scanning, can be matched to the specific type of stone maul used to shape it, allowing us to virtually feel the swing of the craftsperson's arm. The precise alignment of a buried post hole found through radar confirms an astronomical sightline that was suspected but never proven. We are no longer just interpreting the grand final form. We are witnessing the decision-making process, the corrections, the practiced skill. This scientific rediscovery does not diminish the mystery of these places, it deepens it. It replaces vague wonder with a specific, staggering appreciation for the depth of planning and the quality of execution. The unseen engineers left their signatures not in ink, but in the micro-topography of stone and the subtle disturbances in the earth. After millennia of silence, our new tools are finally allowing us to listen. A discovery can be a form of healing or a deep wound reopened. The 22nd foundational concept is not about stone or star, but about people, and the profound ethical responsibility we carry when we seek to understand the past. For generations, archaeology operated under a simple premise that ancient sites were abandoned relics, free for experts to excavate, analyze, and interpret. But we now recognize a more complex truth. Many of these places were never truly abandoned. Their meaning simply moved from stone to story, preserved in the living memory and spiritual practices of descendant communities. The act of digging, therefore, is not neutral. It can feel like an intrusion, a violation of a sacred space that has been cared for through oral tradition for thousands of years. Modern researchers grapple with this daily. A key issue is the treatment of cultural patrimony, the physical objects and ancestral remains that are inseparable from a community's identity and history. For decades, museums worldwide housed collections of artifacts and even the physical remains of individuals, taken without consent from burial sites. To the scientific community, these were invaluable data. To the descendant communities, it was a painful separation from their ancestors, a disruption of spiritual continuity. This has led to a powerful movement for repatriation and reburial, where institutions work to return these sacred items and ancestors to their people, allowing them to complete the journey their culture intended. This process is not about hiding the past, but about honoring a different way of knowing it. It acknowledges that some knowledge is meant to be held, not displayed. Furthermore, the interpretation of sites is undergoing a vital shift. The old model saw archaeologists as the sole translators of the past. Today, responsible practice demands collaboration. This means working directly with indigenous groups, not as subjects, but as partners and knowledge holders. Their oral histories are not myths to be fact-checked against the archaeological record, but parallel narratives that offer context science can never uncover. An elder's story about why a particular hill is sacred can explain why a monument was built precisely there, revealing the spiritual geography that dictated the engineering. This collaborative approach transforms archaeology from a one-way extraction into a meaningful dialogue. It ensures that the story of the unseen engineers is not a cold technical report, but a richer, more respectful narrative that includes the voices of their living legacy. It balances the undeniable value of scientific inquiry with an equally important cultural sensitivity, recognizing that our quest to understand those who came before must be guided by respect for those who are here now. The greatest honor we can give to the ancient builders is to listen not just to the stones but to the people who still hear them speak. A wall built 4,000 years ago still stands without a single drop of glue. That silent, enduring structure speaks directly to our most urgent modern crisis, offering a 23rd foundational concept, a blueprint for sustainable engineering. The ancient principles we have traced, from material mastery to communal effort, are not historical curiosities. They are urgent, practical lessons for a world grappling with climate change and resource depletion. Their approach was inherently low carbon, a masterclass in resilience that we are only now beginning to fully appreciate and desperately need to relearn. Consider the core tenets of their work. First, they used what was locally abundant. They did not ship granite across oceans or manufacture synthetic composites. They learned the language of the stones beneath their feet. This radically reduced the embodied energy, the total carbon cost of their constructions. A modern parallel is the growing vernacular architecture movement, where builders prioritize regional materials like rammed earth, straw bale, or locally sourced timber, creating structures that are both beautiful and intimately connected to their place. Second, they designed for the long term, thinking in generational scales. They built not for a quick return on investment, but for permanence, creating structures meant to outlast the builders by centuries. This stands in stark contrast to our disposable culture of planned obsolescence. Modern regenerative design seeks to emulate this, creating buildings and systems that not only minimize harm but actively improve their environments. becoming net positive contributors over their lifespans. Perhaps most profoundly, they worked with natural forces rather than against them. The dry stone wall flexes with frost heave and settles into a stronger configuration. The crannog uses water for defense and sustenance. The cliff dwelling uses a rock overhang as a natural temperature regulator. This philosophy of adaptation is the opposite of our often brute force approach, where we level hills, redirect rivers, and fight constant battles with climate control systems. Today, biomimicry and passive design look to these ancient models, creating buildings that cool themselves through natural ventilation like termite mounds, or that collect and filter rainwater as a matter of course. Finally, they understood that a project's strength came from the community that built it. The social cohesion, the shared knowledge, and the collective buy-in were as critical as the physical materials. This points toward a modern need for participatory design and construction, where communities have a direct hand in shaping their environments, fostering a sense of ownership and care that ensures maintenance and longevity. The lesson is clear: the most sustainable technology is not always the newest gadget. It is often the oldest wisdom, refined by necessity. The unseen engineers achieved durability not through superior force, but through superior understanding, a deep collaboration with their environment and each other. Their legacy is not locked in the past. It is a living manual waiting for us to read its pages again, to build a future that can stand as long as their stones. The colossal foundation stones at Baalbek are a question carved in granite. Known as the Trilithon, 3 blocks, each estimated to weigh over 700 tons, rest in a platform older than Rome itself. Modern engineers with hydraulic cranes would struggle to place them. The nearby quarry holds an even more staggering puzzle: a single cut stone weighing an estimated 1,600 tons, left partially attached to the bedrock. How, and more intriguingly why, did a culture choose to move stones of such unimaginable mass? While we have plausible theories, the complete narrative of their quarrying, transport, and precise placement remains one of archaeology's great open chapters. This is the 24th foundational concept, the vital space of unanswered questions, the mysteries that ensure the story of the unseen engineers is never truly finished. These are not gaps in knowledge to be dismissed, but luminous invitations for curiosity to continue its work. Across the world, similar puzzles persist. At the Carnac alignments in France, over 3,000 standing stones march in eerie rows across the countryside. We understand the immense social effort required. We can map the geometry, but the specific cultural purpose behind this staggering, landscape-scale composition eludes us. Was it a vast ceremonial pathway, a representation of a spiritual army, or a complex astronomical computer on a scale we have yet to fully decipher? The stones hold their secret. Even at intensely studied sites like Stonehenge, fundamental questions endure. We have compelling models for how the giant uprights were raised using ropes, frames, and earthen ramps. But the precise method for hoisting the 25-ton lintels to perch perfectly atop those pillars, locking them in place with sophisticated stone joinery, is a detail still debated by experimental archaeologists. Each new attempt at replication reveals another layer of difficulty, and by extension, another layer of their skill. Then there are the alignments that seem to whisper of knowledge we have not yet recovered. Certain monuments appear to point not just to the obvious solstice sunrises, but to the more subtle risings of specific stars or to extreme points in the moon's complex 18-year cycle. Are these intentional, precise records of celestial observation, or are we seeing patterns in the randomness, connecting dots our modern minds are desperate to link? This ambiguity is the engine of discovery. It drives researchers to employ new technologies like LiDAR to scan entire landscapes, or to re-examine excavation notes from a century ago with fresh eyes. It reminds us that history is not a solved puzzle in a glass case, but a living conversation between the past and the present. These enduring mysteries do not diminish the achievements of the ancient builders, they amplify them. They confirm that we are still catching up to the sophistication of their thought. The unanswered questions are a gift, a guarantee that the dialogue with these silent engineers is far from over. They ensure that the next generation, armed with tools we cannot yet imagine, will still find wonder in the stones and new stories waiting to be told. Their world is not locked behind glass in a museum. It is a quiet challenge waiting for you to accept it. For just a single day, try to live within the boundaries they knew. Leave your phone in a drawer, set aside your metal keys, your stainless steel cookware, your car. Step outside and see the landscape with their eyes. Your tools are now the stones in the creek, the fallen branches in the woods, the fibers of a sturdy plant. Your task is not to build a monument, but to perform the simplest act, to start a fire without a lighter, to shape a piece of wood without a knife, to find your direction without a compass. Within the first hour, a profound shift occurs. Time stretches and deepens. Every action demands your full attention. Your senses become your primary interface with the world. You notice the grain of the wood, the way a particular rock fractures, the subtle shift of the wind. This is the 25th concept, a personal bridge built not of stone, but of empathetic experience. It is an invitation to feel, in your own muscles and mind, the foundational reality of the Stone Age engineer. Their genius was born from this intimate, uninterrupted conversation with the material world. When every tool is an extension of your own observation, your relationship with your environment transforms from one of consumption to one of collaboration. This exercise reveals less about their technology and more about their mindset. It highlights the immense value of patience, a resource we have largely depleted in our age of instant results. It underscores the power of acute observation, a skill we often outsource to digital sensors, and it illuminates the necessity of communal knowledge, the kind passed through demonstration and shared effort, not downloaded in a manual. So what does their achievement, viewed through this personal lens, tell us about human potential? It suggests that our capacity for innovation is not dependent on the complexity of our tools, but on the depth of our attention and the strength of our cooperation. The leap from a flint blade to a microchip is vast in terms of output, but the cognitive spark that ignited both journeys is the same, a relentless curiosity and a drive to solve problems. This reflection inevitably reshapes our idea of progress. We often chart it as a straight, upward line from primitive to advanced, but their legacy asks us to consider a different model, one where progress is not just about what we can make, but about how wisely we can see, how sustainably we can build, and how meaningfully we can connect. The precision they achieved whispers that some forms of advancement are cyclical, not linear, and that we might need to recover lost wisdom as much as we invent new tech. That quiet patience, that deep observation, that sense of communal purpose, these are not extinct traits. They still reside within the human spirit. Their stones are a mirror, showing us not a primitive past, but a profound part of our own potential, waiting to be recognized and reawakened in ways that address the monumental challenges of our own time. The silhouette of a stone circle against a twilight sky has never been just a collection of rocks. For centuries after their original purpose faded into the mists of prehistory, these structures have acted as a blank canvas upon which every successive age has projected its own dreams, fears, and questions. This is the 26th and final concept, the enduring cultural echo. The work of the unseen engineers did not end when the last lintel was set. It simply entered a new phase, shaping art, identity, and imagination in ways its builders could never have foreseen. In the 18th and 19th centuries, as the Romantic movement swept across Europe, artists and poets recoiled from the cold rationality of the Industrial Revolution. They sought the sublime, the spiritually awe-inspiring, and they found it in these ancient weathered stones. Painters like J.M.W. Turner depicted Stonehenge shrouded in stormy, dramatic skies, transforming it from an archaeological site into a symbol of nature's overwhelming power and mankind's poignant fragility. The poet William Wordsworth stood within a circle and saw not an astronomical tool, but a temple where druids, in his imagination, performed mysterious rites. These artistic interpretations, while historically inaccurate, were profoundly important. They rescued the monuments from being seen as mere curiosities and reinstated them as central, emotive features of the national landscape, sparking a public fascination that demanded preservation and study. This fascination evolved directly into the foundation of modern archaeology and the very concept of cultural heritage. The desire to understand these enigmas led to the first systematic excavations, the creation of historical societies, and eventually, laws to protect ancient sites from destruction. The stones themselves became anchors for national identity. In an era of emerging nation-states, a timeless monument rooted in the soil provided a powerful symbol of continuity, a physical proof that a people and their land shared an ancient, inseparable bond. They became places of gathering not for solstice rituals but for civic pride and collective memory. In our own time, this legacy manifests as heritage tourism, where visitors from across the globe make pilgrimages to these sites. This journey is often more than a holiday, it is a secular pilgrimage. People stand in the center of a circle not necessarily to worship, but to feel a connection to the deep past, to marvel at human tenacity, and to momentarily step outside the frantic pace of modern life. The sites serve as powerful reminders of scale, both in space and time, humbling us with the longevity of human aspiration. Furthermore, their persistent mystery continues to fuel scientific inquiry. The unanswered questions we discussed earlier are not dead ends, they are catalysts. They drive interdisciplinary research, bringing together astronomers, geologists, acousticians, and computer modelers in a common quest. The monuments have become open-air laboratories, challenging our assumptions and pushing the boundaries of what we believe possible about prehistory. In this way, the unseen engineers are still collaborating with us. Their silent stones pose questions that provoke new experiments. Their alignments suggest celestial knowledge we are still deciphering, and their communal ethos offers a mirror for our own societal challenges. Their impact is a living continuum, from inspiring odes and oil paintings to motivating protective legislation and cutting-edge science. These structures have never been inert relics. They are active participants in a dialogue that spans millennia, continuously inviting new generations to look, to wonder, and to build upon the foundations they left in both stone and spirit. The true monument, it seems, was never just the circle itself, but the endless human conversation it has inspired across the ages. Their legacy is not a footnote in a history of tools, but a foundational chapter in the story of the human mind. From the solstice-aligned monuments to the perfectly napped blade, what we have uncovered is a testament to a different kind of power. It is the power of patient observation, of community in action, and of a profound, respectful dialogue with the natural world. We have walked through their mastery, seeing how they mapped the heavens with their eyes, spoke the language of stone with their hands, and etched sacred geometry into the earth with nothing but rope and resolve. Their social coordination moved mountains, and their acoustic designs shaped consciousness itself. This was a sophistication that rivals our own, not in its output, but in its sheer, elegant ingenuity. It forces a quiet revolution in how we define technology itself. We often mistake technology for the latest device, the newest material, but their story insists that technology is, at its heart, a process of understanding. It is the application of deep knowledge to solve a problem, whether that problem is telling time, honoring the dead, or uniting a community. True precision does not begin with advanced tools, it begins with advanced thought. The flint blade, the stone circle, the dry stone tower, these are not the technology, they are the products of it. The real technology was the cultivated patience to watch the stars, the accumulated wisdom of fracture lines, and the shared belief that could mobilize a generation. As we stand amid our own towering creations, facing global challenges of sustainability and connection, their long-term perspective echoes with urgent relevance. They engineered for the century, not the quarterly report. They built with the landscape, not against it. They found resilience in collaboration with their environment and each other. In that sustainable, intergenerational vision, we might find the most precise and necessary engineering lesson of all, a reminder that our greatest resource has always been, and will always be, the human capacity to see deeply, to work together, and to build meaning that endures. If this journey into the depths of our shared past has sparked new thoughts, we would love to hear your reflections in the comments below. For more explorations that reconnect us with the forgotten chapters of human genius, be sure to